Good morning. It's lovely to see you all, and I'm looking forward to speaking this morning. I've spent a long time thinking about it, and the truth is you never actually know how it's going to go until you get up and do it. Can I have the first slide, please? Eat, pray, love. Isn't this what we want? Wait a minute, is that the memo I got from SJ? Well, you know I can be a little bit over the edge at times. Well, I think we wish it said that. And the Bible does say that. Jesus tells us to fast, to feast. Wait a minute, which one? Okay, can we have the real slide up, please? Give, pray, fast. Now that would have been handy, wouldn't it? If we could have left some of that out and we could have had the other slide and we'd all be like, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to love, we're going to eat, maybe some prayer. But what Jesus told us was give, pray, fast. And some of those disciplines are incredibly hard. I wonder if it was any easier for the Jewish people who did it as part of their lives. I think the Jews fasted on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the giving was very exacting and quite legalistic, as you'll see. Some of them tithed the dill, the mint and the cumin, and yet they were ignoring the issues of the heart. What I really want to talk about today is hindrances to giving. Because it's amazing with our hearts how we can reconcile in our own hearts and minds about why we shouldn't have to do something. And what I've always found that the Holy Spirit has spoken to me about, if I say, well, I can't afford to give to missions, I just feel this, oh, wait a minute, I'm not being truthful here. I can afford to give to missions. I can choose not to. But you see, God desires truth in the inward parts. So it's much better for me to say, I don't feel to give to that. And you are not obligated. Giving must be cheerful. It must be what you've decided in your heart, and it should be regular. That's what Paul says in Corinthians. But often we excuse ourselves, don't we? And the next day, after I've said, oh, I can't afford to give to that, there I am, down, eating money that I don't actually may not have either, or doing something else. But it doesn't actually matter. If you see the example in Acts, it wasn't that Ananias and Sapphira, they didn't have to ever sell their land. It was the fact that they lied to the Holy Spirit. That was the problem. No one was obligated in Acts when all the people were selling their land, bringing it before the apostles. No one had to do it. But what God wants us to do is be truthful. It's good to take an inventory and think, you get so many things you have to give to, but be honest with your own heart. I find that I can usually find money for the things I want. In fact, Phil gets very nervous when he says that NZ Post van call dropping to our house. He's like, who is this guy? He's coming very regularly. And sometimes, because I'm doing it late at night, I can't even remember. I think, what did I order? I love online shopping, I've got to be honest. So let's just look at how Paul saw this whole thing. In 2 Corinthians 8, 1-15. And Paul speaks here about the heart. If I can encourage you during this message, think about your heart, not about your bank balance. Now, friends, I want to report on the surprising and generous ways in which God is working in the churches in the Macedonia province. Fierce trouble came down on the people of those churches, pushing them to the very limit. The trial exposed their true colours. Usually when you say that exposed their true colours, the colours aren't great. But listen to this. They were incredibly happy, although desperately poor. The pressure triggered something totally unexpected, an outpouring of pure and generous gifts. I was there and I saw it for myself. They gave offerings of whatever they could, far more than they could afford, pleading, begging with us for the privilege of helping out in the relief of the poor Christians. This was entirely spontaneous, entirely their own idea, and caught us completely off guard. What explains it was they had first given themselves unreservedly to God. Can we just stop for a moment and focus on that? This is where it has to start. This is where it should come from. A heart that is totally, unreservedly given to God. And that's why, and I was looking at the whole dynamic of why the Corinthians were different, and I did a bit of reading about it, and it seems they had a similar mix in the Corinthian church. They had poor and rich people. They had Jews who'd become Christians and Gentiles who'd become Christians. And in the Macedonian church, they had that. The Macedonians had a lot of persecution. They had so much persecution from the time they started the church. Is it possible that perhaps the persecution caused them to continue to give themselves to the Lord? Even though we all think, if persecution comes, we'll run away. I suggest that actually I don't think we will. I think we'll go towards Jesus. There will be some that run away, but there's many of us that can run away during good times. So of course people will go, but there will be people who will be driven towards Jesus Christ because they know without a doubt that we need to rely on Jesus, not on our own clever ways. We will need to rely on Jesus, like the Chinese underground church, how they've managed to multiply, triplify. Is there any more? Quadruplify. Because they know what it is to love Jesus. They know what it is to put their very lives before. Loving Jesus could mean the end of your life. Now that's an incredible thought, isn't it? And sometimes when I remember reading a book called The Heavenly Man, and I said to Phil afterwards, I'm not a Christian, after I read it, because I was so challenged by what people would go through. And then I got really encouraged by Corrie ten Boom. She said, you don't get the ticket before you get on the train. And so I'm believing for us as a body of people that if we do undergo severe persecution, God will grace us and give us strength to get through. But let's go back here. They had completely given themselves to the Lord. If you've completely given yourselves to the Lord, what does that look like? Does it look like being really, really scrupulous with your money? Does it look like being really scrupulous with your time? Does it look like being really scrupulous with your love? Or does it look like abandon? When I first became a Christian, I'll tell you some of the radical things I did. I actually burned all my Pink Floyd records. I wish I hadn't. But because I encountered Jesus in such a powerful way, I was totally devoted to the Lord. I went back to the Catholic hospital where I was working, and Mother Superior said to me, what's happened to you, Bronwyn? And I said to her, I've met Jesus, like she didn't know him. And she smiled sweetly. But people noticed. They noticed my countenance. They noticed my lifestyle. I was totally devoted to Jesus. And it's very hard when you've had an encounter like that to walk away from Jesus. But yes, I've had times where I've been dull and dry and cynical and apathetic, but I always want to come back and put my heart on that altar and say, you bring the fire. On my own, I can't do it. On my own, I couldn't release all the money, and I'm not sure Phil will let me. But I work on him. I do little things like oh, Phil, I've got something really difficult to tell you. And he's like, Flip, what's she doing? And I'm like, I'd really like to give this much to the grandchildren who are sitting here right now. And then because he's so pleased it's not something terrible I've done, he's like, fine, give it all to them. The other giving, following on from that verse, simply flowed out of the purposes of God working in their lives. What are the purposes of God working in your life? Do you ask God, what do you want me to give? Or are you just stuck on a certain sum and you never actually change from it? God bless you if you are. And, there are times and seasons, but can I encourage you to open your heart and devote your heart to God in the areas of giving, fasting, and praying? Do you know, Sam Harvey spoke last week at the Vineyard Conference, which was absolutely fantastic. And he talked about fasting. And I just thought, oh, did you have to? And this week, I have fasted many times in my life, but I had this kind of thing going on at my age. It's dangerous to fast. And I wouldn't want to be in danger. But no, this is what our Jesus, the one our hearts are devoted to, this is what he said. He said, pray and give and fast. These are the disciplines which are kind of meant to be normal for us. These are things that are meant to be normal, but we live in a new covenant and there's no forcing of anything. But I would hope that us who have the Holy Spirit, who've been encountered by the power of Jesus, even more so than the people in the old covenant, would actually be just so lavish in our giving, in our praying, in our fasting. I'll check with the doctor and see what he thinks about me fasting. No, it's not dangerous for me to fast. It's dangerous for everyone else in the house, I think. And I am fasting, okay, I'll say it out loud, and I'm aiming to do 1 day a week, but have dinner at the end, just do breakfast and lunch. But that is fasting. And what is the thing about fasting? Who knows? It's a mysterious thing that you go without food and God acts. But some things, I have seen things happen. You know, in Mark, Jesus came along and the disciples were trying to cast the demon out of the boy, and they're like, we can't do it. And he goes, this kind only goes out by prayer and fasting, and boom, casts him out. Now, did Jesus go off to have a prayer meeting? No. Did Jesus go off and say, I'm going to fast for 3 days? No. Jesus lived a lifestyle of prayer and fasting. That's why he had the power. And I suggest to me that if I live a lifestyle of that, I might, when I pray for people, experience people being set free. Isn't that a great thing to challenge ourselves with? That's what prompted us to ask Titus to bring the relief offering. This was a relief offering that had been asked for a year ago. So what was so well begun could be finished up. You do so well in so many things. You trust, you're articulate, you're insightful, you're passionate, you love us. Now do your best in this. I'm not trying to order you around against your will. See how you notice Paul always appeals? He actually tells them, but it's going to be up to you. But he never slinks back from actually saying, this is the truth. This is what could happen. If you don't, this is what could happen. And then he leaves them. I'm not trying to order you around, but I'm bringing it in as a Macedonian's enthusiasm as a stimulus to your love. I'm hoping to bring the best out of you. Isn't that what love's all about? That we want the best for people. Isn't when Jesus puts his principles in the scriptures, he wants the best for us. all the things he puts there, he outlines this is what will help you have a prosperous life. And I'm talking about be in good health even as your soul prospers. It's soul prosperity we want. We want our souls to prosper. And I think I in the New Testament in John was speaking to Gaius, and he said to him, I pray that you would be in good health even as your soul prospers. And everyone said that to each other in the New Testament church. It was like, hi, how you going? How you doing? And what you would say back was, because when you prosper, I prosper. If we have soul prosperity, this church will not be able to hold the people that Jesus will bring in. He'll bring them in, but we can keep them if we let our souls prosper. And I put to you that actually praying, fasting, and giving is part of soul prosperity. Because as you give, you're trusting. As you pray, you're trusting. As you fast, you're trusting. You're saying, you are greater than our hearts. You are greater than our hearts. You are greater than my plans. You are greater than my selfishness. And I want to go towards you. You see, we make one step towards him. Draw near to God. He will draw near to us. That's what happens. All we need to do is make a step. The Corinthian church was composed of mainly Gentile converts. Now, they were told off so much. So here's Paul, he's putting these two. He's saying, look at the Macedonians. They lived under such terrible pressure. They were incredibly poor, and yet they begged. Just look, can we highlight that word? Begged to be able to give. So what had gone on? They were so in love with Jesus. They were so convinced of the truth that they just wanted to give. It's got nothing to do with how much money you have. And sometimes I think we can expect the people with a lot of money to do all the giving. But it looks to me biblically like that's not always the case. God expects us all to have generous hearts. All of us. And everyone gets to play when giving comes. That's a Vineyard saying about you can all pray for people. You can pray, you can give, you can fast. And you can work out what you can do. You can decide in your heart. But if you decide in your heart, thinking, he's given me everything, why do I get so uptight? I've had people talk to me over the years, is it the gross, is it the net? Who cares? The fact that you're getting so uptight about it's the issue. You know, and we've had people argue with us. And you know, it's not easy. That's not so the case now, but when we were pastors up in Bron Tait, it's your salary and it's really hard. You don't want to give on. You don't want to talk on giving because who has to go into their job and actually present a speech to the boss? This is why you need to pay me and you need to pay me well and you need to do this and that. It's actually really hard for pastors actually, but we would not be discipling you. We would not be discipling you if we did not talk about these three areas: to give, to fast, and to pray. It's part of discipleship. When we sign up for Jesus, even if you didn't know it then, this is part of discipleship. This is what it is. You are familiar with the generosity of our Master Jesus Christ. Rich as he was, he gave it all away for us. In one stroke, he became poor and we became rich. When you're thinking about your money and you're struggling with it and struggling with giving, I encourage you to think about Jesus Christ, to think about the cross, to think about what he gave. So here's what I think. The best thing you can do right now is to finish what you started last year. They had promised money the year before and they had not given it. And so Paul, who was actually their spiritual father, he was their elder, he said, do not let good intentions grow stale. The Corinthian church was so interesting. They were behind in no gift, not one gift. All the spiritual gifts. They were told off quite a lot by Paul because of the sexual immorality in the church. And yet the Macedonians were just praised all the time. What was the difference here? That's what I've been really brooding over and researching. What was the difference? I wonder if, because they came behind a no gift, that the Corinthians became proud and ceased to be grateful. The Macedonians, as nothing's mentioned about gifts, about the spiritual gifts, but they remained humble. They remained grateful. And I think that's what must be the difference. You are familiar with the generosity. So here's what I think. The best thing you can do right now is finish what you started and don't let your good intentions grow stale. You know, I do that sometimes, and sometimes I can feel emotionally like, oh, I'm going to give to that. And then I think I'll wait on that for 24 hours because sometimes perhaps I do need to think about what I'm giving to and make sure that agencies are bona fide and all those kind of things. And personally, that's why I prefer to give into the church, because the church ensures that those kind of mission organisations are actually legit. And so that's one of those. They struggle with open-hearted generosity. He's wanting them to fulfill their commitment. He cautions them about their reluctance. So what are the things that stop us giving? You see, the gifts are not fruit. The Macedonians had the fruit. The Corinthians didn't have the fruit. They had the gifts. And I think it's very important to distinguish these two, because we're looking around the world, we're seeing things happening in churches. Jesus said, by their fruit you will know them. He wasn't talking about the size of their ministry. He was talking about their character, their heart, their fruit in their lives. And that's why when we end up at the end of Jesus is saying to people in Matthew, and they're saying, I cast out demons in your name, I did this in your name, I did this in your name. And he says, I never knew you. You see, you can operate the gifts and not have the fruit. The fruit is the most important thing. The Macedonians had the fruit. The Corinthians had the gifts. But hopefully with Paul being their tutor, things would have changed and they would have gone on. He was very harsh with them at times, but I suggest that to you that he may have needed to be. In Mark 12, 21 to 44, this is talking about the whole thing about the giving and the poor and the rich. Sitting across from the offering box, he was observing how the crowd tossed money in for the collection. Many of the rich were making large contributions. One poor widow came up and put in 2 small coins, a measly 2 cents. Jesus called his disciples over and said, the truth is, this widow gave more to the collection than all the others put together. All the others gave what they'll never miss. She gave extravagantly what she could not afford. Isn't that incredible? Much greater thing to give what you can't afford than to give what you never miss. For 4 things that hold us back from giving: procrastination, hesitation, anxiety, worried about what will be left for you, worried about all kinds of things. And there are a lot of expenses, and we're in a difficult time. I believe there will be a lot of people who will be slapped with mortgagee sales. Do we tell them to stop giving? I don't believe we do. I believe we send them to Corinthians. Decide in your own heart what you will give generously and give regularly. So that becomes between them and God. So it's actually between you and God what you'll give. And maybe that's $5. I think we get hung up with thinking we've got to start with giving large amounts. And I think you've heard Dave say so many times, just start. A few dollars. But decide in your own heart, do it cheerfully, do it regularly, and be generous. That's what I believe our Father would say to you. And the other thing is ignoring our responsibility in the things that hold us back. You know, what a wonderful thing that money was collected for a young man who came down here, who has actually totally put his life towards God, who lost all his tools. He wasn't insured. What a blessing. And this is the kind of church that looks out for people. It's the most generous church I've ever been in. And I noticed it as soon as Phil and I came to work here in 2005. I could not believe the generosity of the church towards the people. The firewood, the Christmas offerings, the food, the programs. It's an incredibly generous church this way. And I'm afraid to tell you, I've been aware of churches that are generous to the leaders and not generous to the people. It was the first time I had ever seen the money going the other way. So I'm telling you that you can trust. Good intentions have to become actions. We want to be doers of the word, not just hearers of the word. You come in here every Sunday, and I'm sure, and I know this now after preaching for years, that most of you, me included, may not remember the sermon that was preached on Sunday. Sometimes I can't remember my own by Wednesday. What was that one? All right. Giving starts as an act of the heart, but then becomes an act of the will. Hesitance and reluctance to part with moolah. I said to Ethan, we should have that song on, money, money, money. And you only have to, I was a hospice nurse, I saw a lot of fights going on about inheritances. Phenomenal fights. Fights where people never speak to each other again. And I personally really support inheritance. It's a biblical thing and it should be done fairly. But the trouble that money causes is incredible. And I've got to be honest. I always am. But even when the farm was divided up, we struggled a bit with the way it was divided up in Phil's family. And that is ugly. Isn't that ugly? But I never thought I'd feel like that until it happened to me. But it's not a struggle for us now. We haven't gone on about it. We didn't refute the will or do anything like that. But that's the hold that money has on us. That's the absolute hold that it has on us, that it can cause some ugly fruit out of your life. And it all comes back to trust. If God gives such attention to the appearance of wildflies, oh, I want to forget this one. Oh my goodness, 5 o'clock tonight I'll be in condemnation sandwich. To wildflowers, most of which are never seen, don't you think he'll attend to you, take pride in you, do his best for you? What I'm trying to do is to get you to relax, to not be so preoccupied with getting, so you can respond to God's giving. What I'm trying to do is get you to relax. People who don't know God and the way he works fuss over these things, but don't we fuss over these things at times? But you know both God and how he works. Have you seen his goodness in your life? Have you seen his faithfulness? Maybe you're a fairly young Christian and you haven't, but you are in for treats. You are in for such wonderful joy, seeing how God cares for you. Steep your life in God reality. Give your heart wholeheartedly to God. Put your heart on the altar and let him bring the fire. over your possessions, over your time, over your devotion, over your money, over your morals. Give your heart totally to him so you can wholeheartedly worship him. Just worship him. Let him sort out all the sums, whether it's net or gross and all that. I suspect if you totally worship him, that's not going to be a big issue for you. You might even be begging to give. I've never seen that in all my Christian life. It's so phenomenal. They're so poor, they're so persecuted, and they are begging, and they gave a huge amount. Don't worry about missing out. You'll find every one of your everyday human needs will be met. Are our hearts totally given to him? Mine's not. It gets given, it gets taken back, it gets turned around with an explanation in my own head. I don't want to be a person who has to continue to keep coming back, keep going through the same lessons. I want to give my heart to God every day. I want to bring the pieces of my heart. Give me a united heart that I might fear your name, O God.